On this episode of the show, I have with me Dave Edelman. He is an executive advisor and best-selling author, and he's been around the marketing space for the last 30 years, and we're going to be talking about AI. We're going to talk a little bit about what's not being talked about enough, actually, and if you really want growth, what you should be doing. Also going to talk about how data and AI are kind of linked together, and it's actually bringing all that data around the enterprise into one particular area, or maybe multiple particular areas, and how that is actually going to help companies deliver on the AI strategy. A little bit of strategy and personalization, because that is one of Dave's sweet spots, and I can't resist that. But Dave, thanks for taking the time.
Oh, terrific to be here, Amir. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, before we dive in, just tell us a little bit more about you before we start the conversation.
Yeah, sure. So I've been on a journey through most of my career at the intersection of data, technology, and marketing. Way back in 1989, before the internet. So I'm aging myself here. I was a young consultant at the Boston Consulting Group, and 3 clients in a row had asked, what can we do with the customer information we're starting to collect? And that led to some of the earliest loyalty programs, targeted advertising buys, and I wrote an article called Segment of One Marketing. And that launched my career. That was rocket fuel. It got picked up by Forbes. I got invited to speak at various conferences. It helped me land more clients for BCG. And I've just stayed in that area through the creation of everything we know today about e-commerce, social media, mobile, and all the enablers that have really driven more and more in personalization. Like one thing I didn't really anticipate enough was content management and everything about that. I focused so much on the data side, not enough on content management. And now, of course, with everything that's going on with AI, a lot of the trade-offs around personalization are negated because you don't have the diseconomies of scale that personalization often forced you into. It's also more than just marketing. It's customer experience. And there's a lot of strategic opportunity there, which is why I co-wrote the book with Mark Abraham, who runs back working with BCG's marketing practice. So I've had this string through a number of jobs working at Digitas, McKinsey. I was chief marketing officer at Aetna, and now just doing advisory work in the space.
Absolutely. Fantastic. I guess, maybe a good starting point would be, we hear a lot about AI, lots of the keywords there around efficiency, process, and unfortunately for a lot of people, when they hear that, they immediately think job contraction, and there's a growing trend of negative sentiment towards AI in general, let alone generative AI, but AI in general, I can see it out there. And you mentioned something interesting, that while we're talking about these words quite often, it's just not enough. I guess what are we missing? Why are those words not enough when we talk about AI?
I think it's not enough because AI could actually create whole new experiences for consumers that could be really positive. I mean, if you just think about, well, why are you addicted to Spotify? Why do you use Uber or Lyft all the time? It's because they're using information about you coupled with AI to anticipate your need, to make things go smoother, to make your whole experience something that just could not happen without those capabilities. And you also know that as you work with it, it gets smarter, which is another attribute of AI. And therefore, it delights you more because it knows more about you. And it's doing all of that in a positive way. And so what we're not talking about is there's a high road where you can think about new solutions, products, services that you can create using the capabilities of AI and a strategy, for example, of personalization, or there's a low road where you could dump a lot of slop out there. You can barrage people with emails simply because you can. You can find more people to spam, and you can start collecting data that you just sell all over the place. And so, yes, there's a low road. And unfortunately, the low road is very visible. It's very easy to see. And it tends to get a lot of attention, justifiably so. The high road, people just do. They just get engaged. And they may not talk about it as much. People talk about bad experiences a lot more than good ones. And so I've been out there, and one of the things with the book and working with clients is thinking about how to bring more strategy to the way you compete using AI. So yes, you want efficiencies, but you want to use those efficiencies to invest in growth. I mean, isn't that what it should be all about?
Absolutely. And I guess, you mentioned around AI, and it does produce a lot for us. And I think a lot of people are getting very comfortable with incorporating some of the big tools out there that they can use with their email, and they can use with their summarization of art. I mean, there's so many little things that we've gotten comfortable using some of these AI tools. And I guess when we think about those use cases, I mean, they're pretty trivial, but it has brought it to the limelight, right? Generative AI was brought to the limelight through ChatGPT, and all of a sudden now everyone has that in their consciousness. When we think about the real driver of growth you mentioned, to actually go in and look at the real opportunity to change things, and you mentioned obviously automation isn't enough. When we want to go and re-envision the customer experience, when we want to go take a look at what is actually going to be valuable to our customers, where do we start? What do we start looking at? Because it's such a gigantic problem if we were just to look at it from that macro.
Yeah, one of the things I do with my clients right out of the gate is, what are the biggest frustrations that people have in your category? What are they? Where are they compromising? Where are they not doing what they really would like to do? So, and there are tools out there. Yes, we talk about the LLMs, but L'Oreal has come up with an analyzer for your face. And you hold your face up to the camera. It finds over 100 different attributes about your face that it analyzes. It then recommends for different kinds of looks and different needs, ideas you have of things you might want to do, ranging from cosmetics to skin care. And it provides customized recommendations given the attributes of your skin and shows you how to use the products. That's a very different way of using AI that's helping people, that's unlocking a door, than most people tend to think about AI, and they are using that, and it is driving growth for them. It's creating new opportunities. I'll give you another example. A lot of this is also just simply to help the buying process. So Cisco, the food delivery company, not the technology company, SYSCO, they have an app that people who buy food and food supplies for eating establishments use to order stuff from Cisco. Well, you open that app, in 300 milliseconds, that app knows who you are, where you are, the nature of your restaurant. What kind of place is it? Is it a tourist destination? Is it a business lunch place? Is it an ethnic restaurant of some kind? It knows how you buy. It knows your menu. It knows your price points. It knows what's in the warehouse nearest to you. And because this is food, what that warehouse wants to move and discount. And if what they want to move is not what you put on your menu, they will actually suggest something to put on your menu as a special so you can take advantage of what to buy. And actually, talking to one of their customers, there was an example of where customer didn't have anything that used beets. And it was clear that Cisco wanted to move beets. So they suggested a beet salad recipe and how that would fit within their price point. So they offered that as a special, and then it became a regular thing on their menu. And so that's value. And since launching that app, Cisco is growing at 50% faster than its competition. And we've talked, in the research for the book, we talked to the eating establishments using this, and they say, this is a no-brainer. We get access to better deals. We get to expand our menu. The more we do with it, the more it learns. That's what I'm talking about. enabling you to do things you just couldn't do before, by taking a high road and saying, we want to create more value for the customer.
A great example, by the way. We won't name names, but I listened. I recently watched something on YouTube about pricing and supermarkets and the notion of dynamic pricing. And as you were talking about taking the high road and doing good, I was like, darn, there are probably the flip examples of going, hey, we have this technology. Let's find out what works in the advantage of the actual business, and it might come at the detriment of the consumer. And I was thinking the Cisco example is fantastic. Like the special showing up in a menu or not doesn't hurt the customer. I mean, there's really a value add. They might try something new out. There's really no negative to them, but it helps each of the restaurants, and they already have thin margins. Obviously, we can also use the technology to shape things the other way. When you kind of think about that, and you think about, I guess, some of the power of personalization that comes with AI, I guess for a company, when they're looking at these experiences for consumers, there is a potential, hey, we could do a net positive or a net detriment to the consumer. I mean, that probably goes with not just AI, but a lot of things. But I guess talk to us a little about just from an AI perspective.
Well, I think the perspective isn't just about AI. The perspective is your brand, the strategy for your brand. What do you want that brand to be? How do you want to be known? How do you want to build equity for your brand? And I think that's what we're losing in this whole discussion of AI. I don't think we're talking enough about strategy and brand and experience in a positive light. Now, you see a lot of companies starting to use chatbot capability to offload calls from their call center and being able to handle things through a chatbot. Now, chat's been around for a while in customer service channels, but it was crappy and people hated it. And it was within very narrow guidelines, and it was a frustrating experience. But now there are capabilities that more and more of these chatbots have that can actually do way more, can get information about the customer faster, can actually look up the customer's contract and interpret it right there in real time, and do things actually that a rep might not be able to do. It could help a rep, or it could answer the customer's question directly. And you're seeing more and more of those kinds of examples of companies who are using chatbots, not just to cut cost, but to actually say, we want to deliver a better experience 24/7, anytime someone can call us, and actually get a very capable customer service agent to do that. But it's always got to be about taking the customer's point of view first, which is why I do think chief marketing officers, for example, have an opportunity now to be a stronger voice in the executive suite, banging on the table for how does it affect our customers? What do our customers need? What solutions are they looking for in the category? And if you're actually using any of the tools to understand how people are asking about you in AI search, you can learn a lot about what customers need. I think the whole irony here is AI is also creating a tremendously valuable pipeline of information that a company can get about what people want, what they're asking about, what their questions are, what their problems are. It's there. And there are many tools. There's a company I work with, Brandlight, and they provide terrific information that helps you understand what people are saying. And then you can use that to create more content, but you can also use that to help your brand and your strategy and what you're offering. And we're not talking about that enough. And so a lot of the negative stuff happens and it gets amplified. And that's unfortunate, because I think we can actually use things to create a much better experience.
Absolutely. That Cisco example, that was interesting because It's a case where probably if people aren't familiar with the food Cisco, that's got to be an interesting conflict of just using their name Cisco. But people have seen on the side of trucks, I'm sure.
Yeah.
They've shifted into technology to address this opportunity differently. I guess technology entering a Cisco like this is different than, let's say, they used it to manage supply chain logistics, which was part and parcel for what they did. But they're shifting into that consumer experience from that technology perspective. Obviously, they're far enough along the technology maturity curve to take advantage of it. If you are an enterprise, and obviously this example's a great one, if you're not that as far along on the maturity curve of just how you use technology, your data, whatever that is, there's going to be some massive leaps to get to where Cisco is. I mean, you're not just going to leapfrog, because companies like McDonald's, like Starbucks, they've been investing 20, 30 years. I mean, that's why their apps are so sophisticated. I mean, Chick-fil-A, they know as you're driving there to not, to start your food when you're in the parking lot. I mean, you got to build up that maturity. When you look at enterprises and you kind of think about how they're going to move into competing with what's coming out, I guess talk to us a little bit about that, because that's got to be a big C-suite discussion.
Oh, no question. I mean, it's one of the reasons you got to start soon. You got to put this on the table, and this needs to be a center of plate strategy discussion, and should have been, frankly, over the summer when a lot of companies were developing their strategic plans for 26. Nonetheless, the capabilities of AI are, in some respects, keep getting easier to tap. And it's much more around the creativity of what you actually wanted to deliver. So, for example, everyone talks about the challenges of data. If you don't have the data, if your data's all over the place. And that data is the fuel of AI. So you do need to have your data act together, but it doesn't necessarily have to go as far as it used to in the past. So, for example, yes, you do need to have data somewhere, but tools now can actually go out and pull data and bring it in from a lot of different databases in real time and bring it together. When Cisco does that, they're not just going to one mega grand database that they built that threw everything together. They're pulling from a number of different places and bringing that together. And the tools now can do that. There are tools to do that. There's a company that I've worked with called narrative.ai. And what Narrative does is it looks at one database, understands its schema, looks at another database, understands that schema, and writes the code to bring that data together in an integrated way. The Trade Desk, for example, if you buy ads through the Trade Desk, programmatic media, the Trade Desk uses Narrative to combine your data as a marketer with their data and together create in real time targeting. Now, yes, these are big, more sophisticated companies, but you can use these tools are available to mid-sized companies and companies who are a bit slower. You need the raw data. You have to be capturing it, but it doesn't all have to be in one grand mega database. And I think that's one of the big changes too from AI, is that these CRM efforts and data lake development efforts that would take a minimum of 18 months with offshore labor pounding away, you don't need to do that now. You can actually bring this data together in real time. That's what RAG, retrieval augmented generation, does. And the better tools start to learn where data is, can figure out how to get it, can understand the semantic way it's set up because they have been working with that data, and then can bring that together. So there are more opportunities to do that. There's also more opportunities to create data in the first place. I mean, take call center interactions, for example. Now AI can listen in on calls, take the conversation with Amir, and digitize that and capture that as unstructured data. And we could learn a lot about Amir. We can learn what he's challenged. Why is he calling? Is he pissed off? Does he mention competitors? And we can put all of that into, for example, an engine that might say, Amir's an attrition risk. Let's go after him. And that's data you wouldn't have had before. So a lot of it has to start with the kinds of problems and opportunities that you want to address. And then odds are there are AI tools that can help you get there. But I just think you got to start. And what I don't see enough of is starting with the problems you want to solve.
I mean, I like that stance, and I like that thought. And I guess when we look at enterprises and companies that want to leverage this technology for these, these personalizations, these experiences, these opportunities, one of the biggest stumbling blocks does come around data. I mean, that's not something new. That's been around for a long time. When we're looking at delivering and looking at our data, I mean, it's definitely going to force the data around the enterprise to be looked at differently. Can you talk to us a little bit about what data and AI, kind of how that relationship plays together?
Yeah, and I can talk about even before AI got crazy. When I was chief marketing officer at Aetna, and this was before COVID, so this is before generative AI, we realized that data was absolutely key to the fuel for our marketing. And as at Aetna, there was not just marketing, for example, to sell people on our insurance. There was also marketing we did to get people to do healthy actions. Because if they did healthy actions, they would be healthier. They'd save money. We'd save money. Get your flu shot. Take your prenatal vitamins. Go to an urgent care center instead of an emergency room for these kinds of things. And we knew what we wanted people to do. We knew who we wanted to do it, but we didn't know how to get them to do it. And that required a lot of test and learn and trying to get information. And so the whole leadership team had to discuss and work together saying, where's all the data that can help us in that quest? And how do we start getting much more disciplined about the gathering of that data, how we bring it together, where we create connections and access to that data. And of course, it's all, this was healthcare. It has to be all incredibly HIPAA compliant and lots of security around it. But it was an executive leadership team thing, cross-functionally working together, marketing with clinical, with customer service. And that was something that really hadn't happened before. And in a lot of companies that I work with, data had been the domain of each independent function who built up their own stacks to support the needs of their specific functions. And they had a lot of vertically specific systems that were geared towards the idiosyncrasies of getting stuff done in that. And along the way, those systems would have database repositories where data would sit. And so you'd have customer files sitting in 5 different places that were inconsistent, maybe not even the same identifier. Now with AI, you want to bring that together. And the tools are there to make that easier to do, but you also have to work together as a team saying, you want to do that. You're going to see data as an enterprise resource, not a functional resource. And that's another strategy mindset that changes the game significantly from having data just going all over the place. And I think the leaders when we did a lot of research on leaders and personalization, they were doing that. They were saying the data belongs to the enterprise, not the function.
Absolutely. I guess when you're looking at personalization strategy, I mean, we've kind of touched on it a little bit. There's not enough time being spent on the strategy, and we're thinking about customer personalization. How high level do you start? do you start pretty high level and then work your way backwards? Is it a bottoms up effort? I guess when you look at trying to better understand your opportunity, or maybe it's both, I don't know. But how do you actually approach, getting into understanding that strategy and your customer?
Yeah, I think that there's essentially a bottom up and top down. And so bottom up, there's still, and let's not lose sight of the opportunities for automation in functions to get stuff done faster, to be able to do it more scalably. If you can create, 10 variations of something and immediately test those and figure out that one works better for Amir and another works better for David, given these characteristics, that's powerful. That's important. Let's not lose sight of that. And so bottom up within functions, there's a lot of opportunity still, and functional groups should be looking to how they take things, processes that have been held back, and unleash the capabilities of AI to make them much more scalable. That tends to be more bottom up. Top down, it is around thinking about the customer. And again, I always start with what are we as a company trying to solve? What's the solution? And things change. Customers have evolving needs. They want society is moving at different paces, and staying abreast of that, understanding what competitors are doing, what's in general happening in the category, and demographics and interests with influencers and what they're talking about. You have to put that on the table, and the better leaders are giving a voice to their marketing leaders at the table to bring insights and ideas about how a company can move its brand closer to what customers really want. One of the things we did at Aetna is, we alternated. Every other leadership meeting was about strategy. So, a lot were about the numbers and operations, but every other one, we had extra time focused on strategy. And we kept putting strategy at the table and thinking through what are the three biggest rocks that we need to move from a strategy perspective, and kept the pressure on in terms of working on those. Just a lot of companies just get caught up in the numbers, get caught up in the cost cutting. And you still need to do that. I'm not saying don't, but you lose sight of the growth opportunity if you're not talking about strategy.
I love it. Dave, I wanted to thank you for taking the time, speaking with us, sharing insights. If somebody does want to learn more, they want to connect, what are some good ways of doing that?
The best way is on LinkedIn. I have a major presence there with over 1 million followers on LinkedIn. I have a monthly webinar that I do on LinkedIn Live. And so it's very easy to connect with me and send me a direct message there.
Absolutely. So there you go. That's a good way of connecting with Dave. Again, thanks for taking the time, Dave.
Thank you, Amir. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right. That's it for this episode. We'll be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, this is a great conversation when we talk about, personalization, the customer, AI. I think all those fit. Dave's an expert in this space, and I was really excited for him to come on and share his insights with us. And I think there's a lot of great points in here that hopefully you guys will share with somebody else who also might be interested and benefit from them. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the podcast is going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.